Yo, welcome back everybody. Today we have a little bit different of a video. Today we have patch notes, and surprise, we had a little bit of a teaser over the weekend during Lobby Legends that a patch was on the horizon. Suddenly patch. Monday, dropping now-ish. This video goes live, the patch is pretty much live. Don't know if it'll go live before or after, but within, an hour of this time period. So without any further ado, patch 23.6 as it pertains to Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds is getting a pretty substantial set of changes here for a patch that is not designed around Battlegrounds. This is the big Mercenaries patch, remember. So the fact that we even get a good change to our game, I'm super excited about this. Number one, Darkmoon Prizes are back. From now until the next Battleground season, so basically 2 months, we're going to have Darkmoon Prizes in 25% of our lobbies. If you remember this event from prior time periods, we had a time period where Darkmoon Prizes were in every game. Then we had a time period where they were in 25% of our games. This is very much like the latter of those two times. You'll see at the Hero Select screen like little tickets around the banned tribes if they haven't changed the interface, indicating that it is a prize lobby. And then that game will offer you prizes on turn 4, 8, 12, etc, etc, etc. Don't need to go down that rabbit hole. If you played Darkmoon Prize meta, you know what you're in for. A couple of the prizes have been changed. They changed the underlying rule. No longer will people be in the bottom half of players be getting better prizes, or bottom half of health pools. Especially with the armor system, that was a very flawed concept. Basically, people were power leveling and then guaranteeing that they were getting good prizes and then just blowing out lobbies. Good. We finally learned from the mistake that the lower health people in the lobby are not the weaker people in the lobby. Turns out that that was abusable, and very abusable at high MMR. Also, a couple other little things here at the beginning. Number one, the number of copies of each Tavern Tier 1 minion is reduced from 16 to 15. This is going to come into play later when they are adding 2 new 1-stars and not removing any new 1-stars or any 1-stars. So if you kept the total number of 1-stars the same, we would just have an abundance of 1-stars compared to the other Tavern Tiers in the later turns of the game. So this is just like heading off that issue. Additionally, if you have your player that uses Battlegrounds Perks, congratulations, you get a free month added to your Battlegrounds Perks. Basically, they are changing the threshold where the Battlegrounds Perks they are disabled and you need to repurchase them to the date of the start of the Battleground season rather than resetting on the start of the standard season. Battleground season restarts 1 month after the standard season, so congratulations, you get a free month. Yay! I think we're all pretty happy with that. Free stuff is good. All right, without any further ado, into the changes. Lady Vashj, new hero. Armor tier 1. Yeah, should be, because this is busted. Busted. Relics of the Deep, Cure Power, 1 gold, discover a spellcraft spell of your tier or lower. Passive, your first one each turn is permanent. Don't even worry about the first part. Just look at the passive. Think about the extremes. Turns out this hero is George. Find 1 glow scale. You get 2 for free, add a permanent divine shield to your board. Sounds pretty good. Mid-game, you get to take tempo off of any spellcraft minion you find. Say, for example, you find a Shoal Commander in the middle of the game, and suddenly you are strong and scaling. This doesn't seem fair. This doesn't seem balanced. I don't understand. Why is this way? Blizzard, why is this so busted? Why did you introduce this? I really would like to see this changed to the hero power, 1 gold, discover your spellcraft spell of your tier or lower, and then passive is this spell is now permanent. So only the spell that you discover is the permanent spell. That means you would have to push your button to take the permanent value, have to spend the gold, and you can't guarantee like a divine shield every turn. Sometimes you get a couple divine shields, it's pretty cool. Otherwise, 1 glow scale shouldn't be your entire strat, Find any scaling and find a glow scale, win the game. Seems a little busted. Throw on top of that the ability to divine shield, wind fury, cleaves, and all that other stuff, and this hero just gets nasty. Basically, all of the advantages Vol'jin has in spellcraft lobbies, and an additional hero power on top of it, and the fact that you can just discover spellcraft spells. Okay, seems pretty good. Seems too strong. We'll see. I'm pretty confident that's going to be a tier 1 hero. All right, so in a surprise sweeping set of changes here, we have a bunch of quality of life buffs and small changes to underperforming heroes. So, strap in. This is what we've been looking for. Congratulations, people that like Bigglesworth and have complained for quite some time that Bigglesworth gets griefed, especially evident around rank floors and whatnot, where people tend to concede a lot. Now, if you have a ghost in the lobby, or you get somebody that concedes against you, you at least get a consolation coin. So Bigglesworth gets a lot better in those ghost lobbies, gets a lot better in those games where people just like, outright sell their board. Yeah, sure. It's basically the same as getting a minion you didn't want to buy, right? So you just like sell it back, you get a gold. Early in the game, this is really nice in ghost lobbies. Like, that's the one thing that's super, super strong about this, is if you have a person concede turn 1, then you can just have a coin to start the game. And a coin in the early part of the game is better than most people's hero powers for the first 5 turns. So, yeah, Cat's gonna love ghost lobbies. Should be pretty interesting to see. Cariol Rome, Conviction is now a much, much, much better hero power. And in a odd choice, why is this so big on the screen? But Cariol Rome, instead of it being a 1/1 buff at Tavern 1, a 3/3, or 3 1/1 buffs at Tavern 3, then 5 1/1 buffs to your minions at Tavern 5, it is now 2, 4, and all minions respectively. So in other words, we actually have a reason to push the button. Is Cariol, does this make her a top tier hero? I don't think so, but I wouldn't be surprised to see her be a B tier hero now. The ability to play Reform Curve or power to 3-on-3, depending on whether your taverns are good or your tribes are good on Tavern 1, is going to make her a very reasonable tempo hero, and especially in like competitive environments, like how Daryl overperforms in tournaments. I wouldn't be surprised to see some Cariol picks nowadays. Should be an interesting hero to play at the very least. Just basically having scaling in the form of your own Divine Shields and your hero power, and maybe put some Divine Shields on the board. And additionally, there is a change to Grease Spot coming up that should be synergizing very well with Divine Shield strats. But we shall see. And Ghoul's gone. Ghoul's removed from the game. There's a new Ghoul effect in the game, but it's not nearly as accessible. So builds that are centering around Divine Shield should be a little bit better this patch. So we shall see. Drekthar. This is a small buff. Small change. Vandar and Drekthar got the same treatment. You can now target and copy from shop minions. You don't want to go through the exact changing in the wording here. Just look, friendly's gone. Now it's just any minion. Copies attack from the highest attack minion instead of the highest attack minion for your board. Your is removed from the wording. So basically you can take advantage of big minions in the shop or target the shop. Small, low quality of life adjustments. Nothing crazy, but useful. All right, Guff. Guff got a fundamental change. Move down tavern tiers because their internal testing shows it's relatively strong. Instead of 1 gold, give each tavern tier minion a 1/1. It is now 2 gold, give a 3/2 buff. 3/2, substantially stronger. Build around hero power. Basically, Guff was not a good hero because it wasn't really worth pushing the button for mediocre mid-game stats. When you make a hero power like this and you make it worth 2 gold, you better make it worth building around. Because if you can build around it and you can play toward cheese, Daryl cheese type stuff, then heroes like this can be good in specific metas and in specific tribal bands in the game. We shall see. These kind of lines, it basically looks like, turn 1, buy a 1-star, turn 2, level, turn 3, buy a 2-star in hero power. That kind of start to a game is so far above average that you're not going to hemorrhage health. And the ability to start the game as Guff at 35 health or 40 health instead of 20, because, you need to go to 3, you need to go find those 3 stars, you need to set up decent tribes on the board, decent minion tiers, I should say, not tribes. Then, yeah, being strong in the early part of the game is still impactful. Does it give you a clear-cut way of winning the lobby? No. But is it significantly better than what it was before? Absolutely. Even though it costs more, it's just worth building around. And in the complete opposite direction, we'll get to Sneed here in 2 seconds. Went the opposite direction of that logic. Saurfang now can use the hero power and carry over between turns. Quality of life adjustment is kind of nice because it enables Toki Curve for Saurfang. Toki Curve being leveling to 2-on-2, buying on turn 3, then on the turn where you have 6 gold, leveling and hero powering because it costs 5 to level. And then you can use your hero power to fill out that last gold. And then the next turn you can just double buy and hero power again and prep it for the next turn. Then double buy and hero power it again to prep for the next turn, and then level And since you have the hero power, you can, sell by whatever it might be. Really, being able to prep this for the following turn gives you flexibilities on a hero that was very, very inflexible prior to now. Should be a nice low quality of life adjustment. Nothing game-breaking, game-changing, but good. Sindragosa. Basically, wording change. This isn't anything crazy. Quite literally not a functional change. Sneed. Big change. Tavern tier 7 to Tavern tier 1. Worst hero tier to best hero tier. I guess they tested this internally and figured out Sneed was busted. We shall see. Give a friendly minion death rattle, summon a minion of the same Tavern tier for 2 gold was the previous hero power. New one is 1 gold, but you summon a minion from the lower Tavern tier. It is confirmed by a dev that this is the Tavern tier directly below, yet again. So basically, if you hero power a 5-star, it'll summon a 4-star when it dies. But yeah, being able to weave this into the middle of your game, where you float a gold, is much more achievable when you have 1 gold hero power than a 2 gold hero power. Now, this is the complete opposite discussion of Guff. Guff with a hero power that is a 3-2 buff to multiple minions is worth building around. Sneed has never really been worth building around when all you get for 2 gold is a random minion of the same Tavern tier. It was good in one specific composition, and those were Vashj comps. And everything else was like, ooh, this does not do enough. And comparing that hero power to playing the game with any other hero power is, it's easy to see why Sneed was not a highly picked hero. We shall see. Bunch of death rattles, a Venge-based meta, a little bit greedier of a game, maybe. Sneed I honestly think will be okay. This is a very reasonable hero power now. It's also playable on 1-stars and it'll summon 1-stars, right? So it doesn't change the Tavern 1 line. Using it early in the game still gets the same value, which will be pretty cool because you just stack them on 1-stars. All right. Vandar, same as the Drekthar. You can now target the minions and take advantage of minions in the shop. Yasiraj now has a functional change where you can push your button when you have a full board and you'll still get the minion added to your hand. You will not summon it to the board. I'm paraphrasing here instead of reading this whole thing because it's really hard to tell what it's saying by reading all of it and putting them side by side. Effectively, all it is that if you push the button and you have a full board, you still get the minion added to your hand. That's it. That's the change. So if you're on Tavern 6 and you're floating 2 gold and you want a random 6-star, you don't want to leave the open board spot, cool. There are times where this is useful. It's not going to change his viability in the early turns. You almost always have an open board spot, etc., etc. But still a very, 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 very good quality of life adjustment. Good things. All of them are nice low quality of life changes to a bunch of heroes. Would like to see this kind of stuff, all of this, in like every patch. This is great. Considering this is a small patch, this is not like a major Battlegrounds change patch. Having 6 to 8 changes to weaker heroes, if we had that every patch, then we'd systematically pull back in the power level of, 2 strong things get pulled down a little, 2 weak things get pulled up a little bit. Quality of life changes, etc., etc. Good for the game, right? Good things. New minions. I've talked about this one on stream enough times that people know my opinion on this by now, but I will say it again for YouTube. What are they thinking with this card? Tavern Tipper. Tavern 1. 2/2. If you have any unspent gold, at the end of your turn, gain 1/2. I don't think we've had a worse card in this game. Ever. I don't think there's ever been a card that has been so unplayable as this card. This one makes no sense to me. I thought maybe they're going to put more cards in that have a very similar type of effect. If they had more cards that had the same kind of effect, then you could get multiple on the board and then be worth floating gold. There's no way 1 gold is worth 1/2, not even in the early part of the game. Maybe on turn 3. If you buy this turn 1, you level on turn 2, you get 1 good minion on the shop on turn 3, you can get a 3/4 out of this minion plus a 1/2-star. Yeah, I'm not buying it. This is not a playable card. I don't know. Likewise, Silverback Patriarch, 1/4 Beast Taunt. This did not replace anything. I was kind of expecting that they were going to remove Alley Cat, adding a new beast to the game. Nope. Just more 1-stars. The biggest change with this guy, Tavern Tipper, shouldn't say guy, and Silverback Patriarch being added is that we reduce the quality of 1-stars in the pool. It is harder to get specific 1-stars. There's less economy on Tavern 1. It's going to incentivize leveling to 2 in specific lobbies, like Beast lobbies, a little bit more. does change the composition of Tavern 1. Makes it riskier to play toward economy units, especially if you don't have one lined up on the board. Just less economy means that people or heroes that like to take advantage of 1-star economy are going to have a harder time. That's the biggest change. I don't see a real reason to use either of these minions, but it does change how likely you are to find really good 1-star minions. Sparring partner. All right, at this point, I want to go down to the bottom and take a second here to highlight why these new cards are useful. We have a minion pool shakeup. Xeris, Shifter Xeris, old crowd favorite out there, and Iron Sensei have been returned to the pool. That is the 1/1 Tavern 3 minion that turns into a random minion in your hand each turn. And Iron Sensei is a 2/2 mech that buffs a random mech on the board +2/+2. Those are back. Accolade of Cthulhu, the 2/3 taunt reborn. Mug, Ghoul, Budding Green Thumb, that's Weed Guy, you know, the 1/4 that buffs adjacent minions on Avenge 3 +2/1. Screwjang Clunker, which is the mech Battlecry buffer +2/2. Prester's Pyrospawn, Argus, and Mocano Egg have all been removed from the minion pool. Okay, this is important to note because a lot of these cards that are being added are taking their place. Otherwise, like, you'd be wondering, why the hell is Sparring Partner being added to the game? Tavern 2 minion, 3/2 taunt, Battlecry give a minion taunt. Don't we already have this effect? This doesn't seem like a very useful minion. Well, there's no more Argus anymore. Accolade's gone on Tavern 2. Taunts are now a little bit more sparse. On top of that, counterplay option to Exodia Pirates just got worse because no Accolade anymore. Sparring Partner gives you a 1 targetable taunt buff instead of a 2 targetable taunt buff. Makes getting online with things that require a lot of taunts a lot harder. Strong Shell will be weaker because you can't give your board all taunt as quickly. Brand gets a little bit weaker because Argus used to be a good brand card. A lot of little changes here. Replacing Argus with something like this and removing Acolyte from Tavern 2, it just changes the distribution of effects and battle cries and such to make different comps and different strategies better or worse. Cookie Chemist, 4/4 Tavern 2. Battlecry swap attack and health of a minion. This one, we can go down a rabbit hole. This thing is crazy. There are all kinds of ways of using this. Tech against specific units, playing around thresholds of different cards attacking into the board, swapping minions like Chroma Wing and Battlemaster, and other extremes that get like a lot of attack or a lot of health. Cool. Cool. A lot of value here. There's just tons and tons of value. Rightfully so, people predicted that Mocano Egg was going to be removed from the game. Turns out that the ability to kill a minion on the board, probably not great to add, because then there's some niche interactions with things like Vol'jin, swapping it on the other things, triggering death rattles in the shop, etc., etc. While I don't think it would have been game breaking because it's just spending a lot of gold to do something kind of good, you know, removing that so that you have more design space going forward is probably a good change. Yeah, makes sense. Get rid of the egg. Just head that problem off before it's a problem. It's not like egg is that impactful in the game anyway. Replace that with something different. All right. But yeah, this one we could talk for days on. There are all kinds of cool effects for it. We're just going to have to play and find all of them. Urel, Tavern 2, 1/5 neutral. After this attacks, give a friendly minion of each minion type +1/+2. So, before people get up in arms about this one, this is not permanent. I don't know how many people in my chat thought this was a permanent buff. This is not a light spawn on Tavern 2. No. It's like a situational spawn. If you have a lot of tribes on the board, it's better than Spawn. If you don't have a lot of tribes on the board, it's worse than Spawn. But Spawn's one of the better 2-stars anyway, so it is not surprising to me that they would design a card that's a little bit weaker than Spawn. Turns out you don't need all neutrals to be better than all tribal units on Tavern 2. We shall see. But I think it's situational, it's useful, and it is at least interesting. Not a bad card to exist in the game. Atromedes. Tavern 4 Dragon. This is replacing Prester's Pyrospawn. Remember, Prester's Pyrospawn was a card that allowed you to give any dragon, you know, the shooty dragon effect. Give a little fireball that pinged off divine shields before dragons attack. No longer will you be able to buff up your Terracosas and Calikis, put oppressors behind them, and have them attack through divine shields. Instead, you're going to have to buff up Atromedes himself, and then he can do a cleave type of effect before attacking himself. So yeah, different way of utilizing the same effect. Not nearly as techable, and definitely reduces the prevalence of specific comps, especially things like the mid-game Amalgadon style boards that you're building with Amalgam plus Nadina plus Sephin on the board to give the Amalgams divine or poison and divine shield, and then putting oppressors behind it and using that to bust through mantids and shit. It was a really, really, really strong comp. Atromedes is not going to be able to do the same thing. On the other hand, Atromedes has some pretty interesting utilization, like for example, cleaving off Leroy itself, potentially taking shields with it in the process, taking out Mantid shields and Leroy. It feels like a very good tech card if you know your opponents are Mantid Leroy stuff, which is good because Mantid Leroy is very strong in the game at the moment. Counterplay is good for that. War Gear, 4/4 mech, or sorry, 5/5 mech on Tavern 4, magnetic. I don't really need to talk about this, do I? That's it. That's what it is. You can buff up things. Mechs can be given a 5/5 stat line for 3 gold. There you go. That's replacing Egg. Make a way of making Deflecto have some health. Very strong on that, and Mech Roll on Cleave, etc., etc. It's a 5/5 buff. Useful in a lot of situations. 5/5 is good. Tunnel Blaster. This is the Ghoul replacement. 3 attack, 7 health, taunt, death rattle, deal 3 damage to all minions. Long story short, Ghoul now is much more explodey. The ability to effectively blow up and kill things like Leroy, take combo pieces like Khadgar, or multiple little beasts from Leapfrogger comp with it at the same time. Super, super duper strong, right? But it's harder to find the card because it's a 4-star instead of a 2-star, so there are fewer of them in the pool. You can't buy it super early and keep it around on the board against specific compositions. It's going to make Divine Shield comps a little bit better because it's harder to get this thing on a whim where you're like, oh, I need a ghoul because I'm playing against George this turn. If you didn't have this thing saved up, you're unlikely to roll into it, or more unlikely than before. So, interesting. Definitely changes the dynamic of shield-based comps in the game now. We shall see. Also, makes some weird late-game pivots a lot harder to play. Well, now we talked about things getting blown up by Tunnel Blaster. How about the new 6-star? Uther, the Lightbringer. 5/6 Battle Cry. Set a minion's health and attack to 15. No longer are we worried that our Khadgar is going to be blown up by the Tunnel Blaster in our Exodia Pirates comp. Suddenly, Uther is here to save the day. Now you have to get the Tavern 6 and you have to find the specific card to be able to do Safeguard like that. But it's another method of counterplaying cards. We have a couple ways already. Blood Gems, for example. We also have Critter Wrangler, plus the Spellcraft spells. And now Uther is another way to play around Zap, play around Ghoul, or New Ghoul, Tunnel Blaster. We shall see. Interesting card. A lot of tempo. Makes tripling in the 6s way better. It's kind of like Gas Coiler existing in the game, where if you miss on what you're looking for, you can always just take a Coiler because the Coiler buys you time and allows you to stabilize on 5 and or power level to 6. Uther's going to do the same thing. He might be a little bit overtuned in terms of number of stats. Counterplay is really good for late game, and tempo is really good for mid game. Cool card. Might be too strong. Last but not least, minion updates. Banner Boar has been changed. We now have a 1 health reduction on Banner Boar, 1/3 instead of 1/4. Battlemaster now has 5 attack. Not a lot to say there. Big change though. 5/25 is way better than 3/25. Soul Devourer wording is just changed to make it consistent. Greasebot is the big one. Greasebot has been moved from Tavern 4 to Tavern 6. And instead of having a 1/1 buff each time a Divine Shield is popped, it is now a 3/2 buff. A build-around effect. Better than Golden Greasebot. If you can get to, Deflecto mech roll type builds and get Greasebot rolling on this board, that's a lot of stats. 1 Greasebot plus Deflecto comp plus a taunt Divine Shield mech roll that can get reset 3 or 4 times. Suddenly you're getting 18 plus attack added to the board per turn passively. And that's pretty good. Considering mechs can take advantage of attack and stats way better than most tribes can, this kind of scaling is kind of scary. We shall see. Last but not least, new and updated Darkmoon Prizes. Since Darkmoon Prizes are back, they got rid of a couple of the things, or they nerfed a couple of the overperforming cards and buffed a couple of the underperforming cards. Good stuff has fundamentally been changed from instead of 2 health on all minions for the rest of the game is now 1 attack on all minions for the rest of the game. Way weaker, right? Still interesting, but way weaker. Now, good in certain comps, right? 2 health was really bad if you were playing Avenge comps. This is way better if you're playing Avenge comps. So, like, there's a place for it. Rat in a Cage gets 2 attack up front, then doubles attack instead of just base attack. It's very nice for things like, say, for example, a Hydra in the middle of the game. Might only have 2 or 4 attack at the time, and now instead of it being a 2/4 that gets buffed to a 4/4, which you would never buy, you never take, a 2/4 that gets buffed to an 8/4 is a much more interesting thing to do on turn 8. Great Deal has been nerfed. I'm calling it nerfed. Technically, it's just changed because, you know, this is always a nerf. But for the rest of the game, reducing the cost by 3 per turn for upgrading a tavern just to a one-time 6 reduction is good for this turn. It's good for next turn. Equivalent for the turn after, as long as you didn't level in the previous turn. And then weaker for the rest of the game. Yeah, it's pretty tough to justify. But it is 6 gold. If you're planning on leveling, it's basically, would you like a turn 8 spell that gives you 6 extra gold? And sometimes that's good. 6 gold is good. Bouncer, which was already one of the higher win rate turn 8 spells, got an extra 1/1 buff. I think people just undervalue stats sometimes. And yeah, this one's pretty good. Turns out, a 6/6 buff in the middle of the game, especially on a Divine Shield, is pretty impactful. Bananas has been updated accordingly with the Mukla change that has happened since the last Darkmoon Fair. The bananas have a 50% chance of being big bananas instead of a 33% chance. So instead of it being approximately 13 stats from the banana spell, it is now 15 stats, 15/15. Also, they changed a couple of the prizes. Banana has been removed from the turn 4 spell list. It is now Banana Bunch, which gives you 2 bananas. And those 2 bananas are now buffed as well to the 50% chance to be big bananas. So on average, a 5/5 buff on turn 4. Yeah, that's actually busted. Like, this is going to be one of the best hits, maybe the single best hit. Turns out that just putting 5/5 on something on turn 4 and then being able to leverage that level of power is way better than the average thing. Last but not least, Mind Flayer Goggles. This is a turn 12 spell. Basically, this is one of the effects that came from Wheel of Yogg-Saron during Buddy meta. Steal all of the minions from Bob's Tavern, refresh the tavern. Okay, free gold, free effects. Decent. Good with Bran, good with Gallywix, good with a couple other effects. Meh. I can't see this one being like build around or like super impactful, but there's going to be a time and a place to play it, which is usually a good design, right? Situational, useful, good. And like I said before, prizes are not increased or made better by being in the bottom half of players anymore. Good, because that got abused really hard in the last meta. Heroes that didn't have armor were already stronger heroes, and they were tended to be in the bottom 4 in the first 4 turns. Heroes that like to level to 3-on-3, which are really strong heroes right now, tend to be in the bottom 4. Getting guaranteed good spells was too much, and it was way too abusable. Good on Blizzard for acknowledging that gauging heroes that are stronger not being in the bottom half of the pool. The weaker heroes aren't the ones in the bottom half of the health pool, right? Using health as a resource is a very common tactic, and having a way to abuse that was, let's just say it was not fair last time, and created some very imbalanced situations. All right, guys, that should cover it. There's a couple like little bug fixes and other things in here, but that is the patch. I will be going live here shortly. By the time this video goes live, I should be live on Twitch. If you guys are interested in discussing the patch, I will be around all day. I'm going to try out all the new stuff. Expect new videos from new patch material starting tomorrow. And let's go play the new stuff. Enjoy.